Here's a truth most people are afraid to admit. Not everyone who is close to you is good for you. Not everyone who shares your blood deserves unlimited access to your mind. Not everyone who shares your history deserves control over your future. We're taught a dangerous idea. Family is forever. Friends are sacred. Loyalty means enduring everything. But Stoicism offers a quieter, more honest frame. Your first responsibility is not to keep everyone comfortable. It is to protect your mind, your time, your inner state. Because some relationships don't break you loudly, they poison you slowly. Through jokes that shrink you, through guilt that bends you, through patterns that make you doubt your own reality. And the most damaging part? You don't even realize you're bleeding. You just feel tired, irritable, smaller than you used to be. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the quality of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts, and your thoughts are shaped by the people you keep close. So the real question isn't, do I owe them loyalty? The real question is this relationship strengthening me or quietly eroding me? Today we'll walk through 8 signs that tell you one thing clearly. It may be time to cut ties, even with family, even with friends, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. Sign 1, they belittle you. At first, it doesn't sound like an attack. It sounds like a joke, a tease, a comment said with a smile. Something like, "Relax, I'm just being honest. You're too sensitive. I didn't mean it like that." But somehow, every time you leave the conversation, you feel smaller than when you entered it. That's the first sign. People who belittle you don't usually insult you directly. They shrink you indirectly. They disguise disrespect as humor. They frame criticism as just joking. They make your ambitions sound childish. Your boundaries sound dramatic. Your growth sound inconvenient. Psychologically, this works because of micro-invalidation. Small, repeated signals that tell your nervous system, you're not taken seriously here. And the brain is extremely sensitive to this. Over time, your confidence doesn't collapse. It erodes. Like water dripping on stone. Not loud, not dramatic, just constant. The real damage isn't what they say, it's what you start to believe. You begin editing yourself, lowering your standards, downplaying your goals before anyone else can. This is how self-doubt is socially engineered. Here's the uncomfortable question most people avoid. If a stranger spoke to you this way, would you tolerate it? If the answer is no, then why does familiarity make it acceptable? Stoicism treats this very clearly. Marcus Aurelius wrote that your mind becomes shaped by what you repeatedly allow inside it. Not what you intend, not what you hope, what you tolerate. A belittling environment becomes a graveyard of self-esteem. Not because the words are powerful, but because repetition is. And here's the part people misunderstand. This isn't about being offended. It's about being conditioned. When someone constantly frames you as less competent, less serious, less capable, your nervous system adapts to that role. You start showing up smaller without realizing it. You speak softer. You ask for less. You settle faster. The behavior pattern is subtle but predictable. Belittling to internalize doubt, to lower self-expression, to lower self-respect. Now, the Stoic response is not confrontation by emotion. It's boundary by clarity. Not, "You hurt my feelings," but "That doesn't work for me." Short, calm, non-negotiable. Because boundaries are not arguments, they're filters. Doors have locks. Healthy people knock. And here's the key reframe. Someone who truly respects you doesn't need to reduce you to feel safe around you. They don't compete with your growth. They don't joke about your discipline. They don't mock your standards. They either adjust or reveal themselves. Which leads directly to the next sign. Because once someone feels threatened by your growth, the jokes stop being playful and start becoming defensive. Sign 2. They never take responsibility. At first it feels confusing. Every conflict somehow ends the same way. You start by explaining what hurt you. You end up apologizing. Not because you were wrong, but because the conversation slowly shifts. They reinterpret events. They deny details. They minimize your feelings. They say things like, "That's not what happened. You're overthinking. You're making a big deal out of nothing." And before you realize it, the original issue disappears. Now you are the problem. This pattern has a name in psychology: gaslighting. It's not always intentional, but it is always destabilizing. Gaslighting works by attacking your perception of reality. Not directly, but gradually. You stop trusting your memory, your instincts, your emotional reactions. You begin to think, maybe I'm too sensitive, maybe I misunderstood, maybe it is my fault. And that's the real danger. Not the argument, not the disagreement, but the erosion of self-trust. A person who never takes responsibility creates a distorted moral environment. In their world, mistakes are always external. Problems are always someone else's. Accountability is always avoided. This forces you into an impossible role. You become the emotional janitor, cleaning up conflicts you didn't create, carrying guilt that isn't yours, managing their emotions so they don't have to. Here's the brutal question. How many of your apologies were actually confessions for someone else's behavior? Stoicism draws a hard line here. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a rational mind seeks truth, not comfort. And truth requires one thing above all: ownership. Without responsibility, there is no growth. Without growth, there is no trust. Without trust, there is no real relationship, only power dynamics. People who never take responsibility don't want resolution, they want control. Because if you doubt yourself long enough, you become easier to shape, easier to guilt, easier to keep in place. This is how emotional dominance works quietly, not through shouting, but through rewriting reality. Now, the Stoic response is not to convince them. You cannot reason someone into accountability if accountability threatens their identity. The Stoic move is simpler. You stop debating your experience. You stop explaining what you feel. You stop justifying what you know. You state facts. You observe patterns. You decide boundaries internally, not to punish them, but to protect your mind. Because once someone shows you they refuse to face themselves, they are telling you something essential. They are not a safe mirror. They don't reflect truth. They distort it. And staying around distortion long enough makes you lose your own shape, which leads to the next sign. Because when someone avoids responsibility, they also avoid reciprocity. They don't show up for you. They show up when they need something. Sign 3, they only come when they need something. At first, it looks like coincidence. They text you out of nowhere. They suddenly want to catch up. They sound warm, interested, almost nostalgic. And then the real reason appears. They need a favor, a resource, a connection, your time, your energy, your attention. Once they get it, they disappear again. No follow-up, no genuine interest in your life, no presence unless there's a problem to solve. This is not a relationship. It's a transaction disguised as intimacy. Psychologically, this creates a one-way attachment loop. You become associated with utility, not value, not companionship, not mutual growth, just usefulness. And the brain is wired to seek reciprocity. When it doesn't get it, it still tries to earn it. So you keep giving, hoping this time it will be different, hoping this time they'll stay. But they never do. Because in their internal model, you are not a person. You are a tool. Here's the uncomfortable reflection. If you stop providing value tomorrow, would this relationship still exist? Stoicism treats this brutally honestly. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we should choose our relationships the way we choose our environment, because they shape us whether we notice or not. A one-sided relationship trains you into a specific role: the giver, the rescuer, the reliable one, the one who's always there, but never the one who is supported. Over time, this does something dangerous to your psychology. You begin to equate love with usefulness, connection with service, belonging with sacrifice. You start feeling guilty for resting, for saying no, for having needs of your own. This is how people become emotionally overdrawn, always available, always accommodating, always empty. The Stoic response is not resentment, it's recalibration. You don't cut them off dramatically, you simply stop overfunctioning. You delay responses, you stop anticipating their needs. You match their level of effort, not to manipulate, but to observe. Because true relationships adjust when energy shifts. Exploitative ones disappear, and that tells you everything you need to know. Here's the principle. Mutuality is the minimum requirement for intimacy. Not chemistry, not history, not obligation. Reciprocity. If the emotional flow only moves in one direction, it's not connection, it's extraction. And when someone sees you primarily as a resource, they will eventually start treating your boundaries as obstacles, not as signals. Which leads to the next sign. Because once people get used to taking from you, they begin to feel entitled to you. And entitlement never respects limits. Sign 4, they ignore or make fun of your boundaries. At first it's subtle. You say you're busy, they push anyway. You say you're uncomfortable, they laugh it off. You say no, they treat it like a suggestion. They might even frame it as care. I'm just worried about you. I know what's best for you. You're being dramatic. But underneath the language is a simple message. Your limits don't matter here. Psychologically, boundaries are not about control. They are about self-definition. They tell the nervous system, this is where I end, this is where you begin. When someone repeatedly ignores them, something deeper happens. You stop feeling like an individual. You start feeling like an extension of their needs. And that's where resentment quietly grows. Not because they crossed a line once, but because they taught you your lines don't exist. People who mock boundaries often disguise it as humor. They call you too serious, too sensitive, too rigid. But this is not emotional intelligence. It's emotional entitlement. Here's the question most people avoid. If someone only respects you when it's convenient for them, is that respect or tolerance? Stoicism sees boundaries as an internal act of discipline, not a social negotiation. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you should not explain your philosophy, you should embody it. Meaning, you don't debate your boundaries, you enforce them through consistency, not with anger, not with lectures, but with predictable consequences. When you say no, it stays no. When you leave, you stay gone. When you disengage, you don't re-enter emotionally. Boundaries only fail when they are theoretical. They only work when they cost something. And here's the hard truth. Anyone who benefits from your lack of boundaries will feel threatened when you develop them. Not because you changed, but because the dynamic did. You are no longer programmable, no longer endlessly accessible, no longer emotionally open source. You become sovereign. And sovereignty feels like rejection to people who are used to access, which leads to the next sign. Because once you stop being controllable, some people don't just ignore your growth, they begin to resent it. Quietly, competitively, enviously. Sign 5, they are envious of your success. At first, it doesn't look like envy, it looks like silence, a forced smile, a lukewarm congrats. You share good news, and the energy drops. You talk about progress, and the subject changes. You mention growth, and they make a joke to shrink it. They don't attack you directly, they just stop celebrating you. This is one of the quietest forms of relational toxicity, because envy rarely shows up as hatred. It shows up as withdrawal, as passive comments, as subtle sabotage disguised as concern. They say things like, "Don't get too ahead of yourself. Are you sure that's realistic? Just don't forget where you came from." On the surface, it sounds protective. Underneath, it's comparative. Psychologically, envy emerges when someone ties their self-worth to relative position. Your growth becomes a mirror, and what they see in that mirror makes them uncomfortable. So instead of growing with you, they try to pull you back down. Not consciously, not maliciously, but structurally. Here's the uncomfortable question. Do some people in your life feel more threatened by your potential than inspired by it? Stoicism treats this as inevitable. Marcus Aurelius wrote that people resent excellence because it reminds them of what they avoid becoming. Your discipline highlights their comfort. Your progress exposes their stagnation. Your boundaries reflect their lack of structure, and that creates internal friction. Now here's where most people get trapped. They start shrinking themselves to preserve harmony. They downplay achievements. They hide ambitions. They avoid talking about growth, not because they changed, but because others couldn't tolerate the contrast. This is how high-potential people self-sabotage socially. They trade trajectory for acceptance. But Stoicism is very clear on this. You are not responsible for regulating other people's insecurities. You don't need permission to evolve. You don't need consensus to improve. You don't need approval to outgrow your old environment. The Stoic response is not confrontation, it's non-compression. You stay the same size you're becoming. You speak honestly about your goals. You continue your path without emotional negotiation, not to prove anything, but to remain aligned with yourself. Because anyone who truly cares about you wants you to expand. They don't compete with your growth. They don't minimize your wins. They don't feel smaller when you get stronger. They feel encouraged. And when someone consistently feels diminished by your evolution, they are telling you something important. They are attached to an older version of you, a smaller one, a safer one, a more controllable one. And once you no longer fit that role, the relationship begins to destabilize, which leads to the next sign. Because when people feel internally threatened by you, they start monitoring your emotional state. You begin to feel like you're walking on eggshells. Sign 6. They make you walk on eggshells. At first, you don't notice it consciously. You just feel tense before seeing them. You rehearse what you're going to say. You filter your words. You manage your tone. Not because you're lying, but because you're trying to avoid triggering something. Their moods are unpredictable. Their reactions feel disproportionate. Small things turn into emotional landmines, so you adapt. You become careful, strategic, hyper-aware. Psychologically, this is a state of emotional hypervigilance. Your nervous system stays slightly activated around them. Not in danger, but not at ease either. And the body interprets that as threat. Over time, you associate the relationship with tension. Not safety, not warmth, not calm, just management. Here's the brutal reflection. Why does being yourself feel risky around someone who claims to care about you? People who make you walk on eggshells often lack emotional regulation. They externalize their inner state. If they feel bad, someone must be responsible. If they feel triggered, someone must fix it. And slowly that responsibility becomes you. You start anticipating their reactions, adjusting your behavior, suppressing your honesty, not because they asked you to, but because the emotional cost of not doing it feels too high. This is how people become emotionally controlled without being told. The Stoic perspective here is sharp. Marcus Aurelius wrote that no one can disturb your mind without your cooperation. But cooperation doesn't always look like agreement. Sometimes it looks like adaptation. You change your tone, your timing, your personality, until the relationship no longer reflects who you are. It reflects who you need to be to keep the peace. And peace built on self-erasure is not peace. It's emotional submission. The Stoic response is not emotional withdrawal. It's emotional sovereignty. You stop managing their inner world. You speak normally. You act consistently. You let their reactions belong to them. Not cruelly, not defensively, just neutrally. Because emotional adults regulate themselves. They don't outsource that job. And here's the key insight. If someone requires you to constantly self-edit to remain connected, they are not connected to you. They are connected to a version of you that feels safe for them. And the cost of maintaining that version is your authenticity, which leads to the next sign. Because when you're always adjusting for others, your time stops being yours. Your energy stops being yours. And eventually your life stops being organized around your priorities. It becomes organized around theirs. Sign 7. They don't respect your time or effort. At first, it seems minor. They're always late. They cancel last minute. They expect you to be available on demand. They say things like, "I forgot. I got busy. You know how I am." And you let it slide. Once, twice, 10 times. But here's what's actually happening psychologically. Time is the deepest form of respect, because time is non-renewable. When someone consistently wastes yours, they're not just being disorganized, they're signaling priority. Not with words, but with behavior. You rearrange your schedule, they don't adjust theirs. You show up prepared, they show up distracted. And slowly a pattern forms. Your life bends around their convenience. Their life stays centered on themselves. Here's the reflection most people avoid. If someone treated your goals the way they treat your time, would you still trust them? Stoicism frames this very clearly. Marcus Aurelius wrote that what we choose to spend our time on is what we choose to value. Not what we say, not what we promise, what we consistently invest attention into. People who don't respect your time don't see your life as equally real as theirs. They assume flexibility from you, but rigidity from themselves. And this trains your psychology into a dangerous position. You become always available, always accommodating, always secondary. You feel guilty for saying no. You feel selfish for protecting your schedule. You feel responsible for maintaining access. This is how people lose sovereignty over their own lives. Not through force, but through patterns. The Stoic response is not anger, it's structure. You stop over-explaining. You stop justifying your availability. You stop filling empty space for others. You give clear windows, clear limits, clear consequences. Not to punish, but to realign reality. Because real respect is not emotional, it's logistical. It shows up in calendars, in punctuality, in follow-through. And here's the hard truth. People who truly value you protect your time as much as their own. They don't treat your energy as public property. They don't assume access. They don't guilt you for having a life. They understand something simple. Time is life in fragments. And when someone repeatedly wastes yours, they are slowly wasting your life. Which leads to the final and most revealing sign. Because after all the patterns, all the behaviors, all the tension, there is one signal your nervous system never lies about: how you feel when they are gone. Sign 8. You feel peaceful when you're apart. This one is different. There's no argument, no dramatic conflict, no obvious betrayal, just a feeling. When you're not around them, your body relaxes. Your mind feels quieter. Your chest feels lighter. Your thoughts feel more organized. And when you realize they're about to come back into your life, something tightens again. Not fear, not anger, just resistance. Psychologically, this is your nervous system giving you data. Not opinions, not stories, not guilt. Information. The body tracks safety more accurately than the mind. You can rationalize behavior. You can justify patterns. You can override logic with loyalty. But your nervous system doesn't negotiate. It simply records. Do I feel regulated here or drained? Do I feel expanded or contracted? Do I feel grounded or on edge? Here's the reflection most people resist. If distance makes you healthier, what does closeness cost you? Stoicism aligns perfectly with this. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a calm mind is not one that avoids people, but one that is not disturbed by them. Peace is not isolation, it's internal order. And when a relationship consistently disrupts that order, it's not connection, it's noise. Now here's where guilt enters, because the mind immediately responds with stories. They mean well, they've always been there, I owe them. But obligation is not a metric for psychological health. History is not a license for harm. Blood is not a justification for imbalance. Stoicism is brutally simple here. Anything that repeatedly destabilizes your inner state is misaligned with your nature. And alignment is not about comfort, it's about coherence. Does this relationship support who you are becoming, or only who you used to be? Does it reinforce clarity or create constant emotional static? You don't need a villain to leave. You don't need proof. You don't need permission. Sometimes the only signal you get is this: you breathe better without them. And that is not weakness. That is intelligence, because your nervous system is older than your social conditioning. It evolved to detect threat and safety long before guilt and loyalty existed. And when your body consistently tells you a space is peaceful without someone, it's not rejecting them. It's choosing you. Which brings us to the final question. What does it actually mean to cut ties without becoming bitter, cold, or isolated? That's where Stoicism gives its deepest answer. Cutting ties doesn't mean you become heartless. It means you become honest. Honest about what strengthens you. Honest about what drains you. Honest about the environments your mind can actually thrive in. Stoicism never taught people to abandon others impulsively. It taught something far more difficult: to stop abandoning yourself. Most people don't stay in unhealthy relationships because they're weak. They stay because they confuse endurance with virtue. They mistake loyalty for self-erasure. They think being good means being endlessly available. But Marcus Aurelius wrote something most people ignore. If something is not right, do not do it. If something is not true, do not say it. He wasn't talking about morality in theory. He was talking about alignment in daily life. Your relationships are part of your environment, and environment shapes character. You cannot become calm in chaos. You cannot become grounded in distortion. You cannot become strong in spaces that require you to shrink. This is the real Stoic standard, not how much can I tolerate, but what kind of person am I becoming here? Because every relationship trains you. It conditions your nervous system. It teaches you what love feels like, what respect looks like, what normal becomes. And if your normal is exhaustion, guilt, tension, and self-doubt, that's not love. That's adaptation. Stoicism is not about cutting people off. It's about cutting patterns off. Patterns of self-betrayal, patterns of emotional overfunctioning, patterns of staying where your soul has already left. You don't need revenge. You don't need explanations. You don't need dramatic exits. You just need clarity. Clarity to choose peace over performance. Clarity to choose self-respect over approval. Clarity to choose growth over familiarity. Because the strongest men and women are not those who endure everything. They are those who know what they refuse to carry. And if you want to keep building that kind of mind, calm, grounded, and unshakably strong, subscribe to Psychology of Stoics. Here we don't teach you how to escape life. We teach you how to stop being controlled by it, one clear boundary at a time.